Well, we don't want to be guilty of shutting out the Mad Dog and Mike. So with the rain coming down here at Shea, it'll be a while before we get started. And until then, we'll send you over to a special rain delay edition of Mets Extra. Mike Francesa and the Mad Dog are filling in for Howie Rose on the WFAN Mets Radio Network.
Hi there, Michael. Welcome back, everybody, for this rain-delayed version of Mets Extra. Howie, of course, the vacation off because of the Jewish holiday.
Howie picked a nice day to take off, didn't he?
Mike and the Mad Dog back with you after a quick hour, 5:37 to 6:30. You, of course, did a phenomenal job with Mets Extra, an enlightening interview with Buddy.
And for those of us along the Mets, WFAN Mets Radio Network who don't know us, we are Mike and the Mad Dog.
Mike Francesa, Christopher Russo. Afternoons locally here in New York. So if you want to call us from Hawaii to talk about rainbow football.
Well, they know me because of a little football, and they love their college football out in Hawaii.
Mike will be
and in your favorite town.
If you're in Laramie, Wyoming tonight, you want to talk to Mike about Paul Roach. He can handle it.
What's your favorite town?
Honolulu.
That's it.
Honolulu. So a lot of things going on here in the world of sports. I think the first thing we should do, Mike, let me get a little update with some folks around the country. Give us some thoughts about all the big games.
Well, let's tell them first here that it is raining steadily and probably more heavily than it was even earlier. If anything, it has intensified. And I would say the Mets, who are going to make a decision
by 8:30.
34 minutes from now, it looks to me I will be shocked if they're going to play baseball here tonight. I got a feeling we're headed for a doubleheader tomorrow. Weather forecast for tomorrow, we're going to update it, but it is good for tomorrow as of right now. So it looks like we may have a doubleheader at 1 tomorrow. The Mets and the Expos playing at Deuce before the Mets head for Chicago. 4-day games Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Well, what a break that is for the Pirates, having the Mets and the Expos lock horns for 2 games tomorrow afternoon. Chances are you're talking split, and what they do, they're okay. 2 more games off the schedule. Very hard to get a W, 2 of them in a row, in a doubleheader situation. All right, first things first, let's get a quick report from Toronto. We shall do that. Yankees and Blue Jays are there. The Blue Jays obviously in a serious dogfight with the Red Sox first place, and covering that for the fan is Charlie Lennox. Charlie joins us. Charlie, what's going on?
Well, Mike and Chris from Toronto here. We don't have a weather problem like I just heard you fellows talking about at Shea because we got the lid closed tonight, thank goodness, because it has been overcast and showers all day. The weather's not good. Yankees at bat here in the top of the second, and there's 2 out. Jimmy Key on the mound in this game tonight. He pulled damaged a hamstring here in his last start after 5 innings, but he's now back and appears to be okay. One interesting note, Key has pitched more innings against the Yankees at 128 than any other American League club, but he hasn't defeated the Yankees here at home since 1987. On the other side, Tim Leary, he's trying to improve his 9-18 record, and he beat the Tigers, of course, last Friday in Detroit, and he's looking pretty good here, having retiring the Jays in order in the first. The Yankees, of course, want to snap this 4-game losing streak they've got and stop this Jays momentum where they've gained 6.5 games since the 1st of September. So the Yankees batting here in the second, and there's no score.
Thank you, Charlie. That's Charlie Lennox in Toronto.
We'll get back to him a little bit later on.
Flat-footed tie, 81 up, 68 down for Boston and Toronto. The Red Sox drew first blood down in Baltimore. Harris against Telford. Ted Patterson standing by in Baltimore. Ted, what's going on?
Well, as you mentioned, Mike, the Red Sox do lead it. Their big lead, of course, is evaporated in the standings, and now they're just hoping to get out of Baltimore, at least tied for the lead, and they're thrusting it on the shoulders of Greg Harris tonight, and he's 3-0 against the Orioles this year, so he's done well. Anthony Telford's a young rookie. He's 2-2, and he dished up a hit to left to Jody Reed to lead it off, and Carlos Quintana hit the first pitch to right center, so it was first and third, and Wade Boggs hit a line drive to left, and Joe Ursulak made a nice catch, but the sacrifice fly produced the run. Burks got a hit, and then Greenwell and Evans went down, so it's now in the second inning as the Orioles have done, well, they had 1 hit off of Harris, Cal Ripken, but it's 1-0 Boston, and things are a little testy in the Red Sox clubhouse. Last night, Tony Pena threw a chair and was shouting some invectives towards his teammates, things like quitters and choke artists and things like that, trying to shake things up. I think a few guys were stunned. Red Sox aren't used to that in their clubhouse, so we'll see if it works tonight.
Thank you there, Ted.
Ted, is the Clemens information that we received today up to date? There's been no change. He will go Sunday against the Yankees, and then they hope the 28th and 3rd. Are they still saying that's what's on the board for Roger Clemens right now?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Joe Morgan said that he's, of course, left town. He's in Boston getting examined either today or tomorrow by Dr. Pappas.
Right.
And he's slated to go Sunday, and they're hoping he can go 3 times. And and that he's going to be healthy. Of course, he's not talking. We had to talk to Marzano and Bill Fisher and Morgan yesterday, so you just kind of get dribs and drabs on exactly how he's feeling, but everybody's upbeat about it. And he threw, according to Marzano, in the high 80s, low 90s yesterday, and almost as if he was pitching in a game.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
We'll keep in touch with him down in Baltimore there, Michael.
Mike and the Mad Dog on the WFAN Mets radio network. Right now, we'll take a 10-second break for stations to identify themselves.
All news, weather, traffic, sports, all the time. This is AM 1540, WPTR Albany.
Back here at Shea, this is Mike Francesa, Christopher Russo, as we are in a rain delay here at Shea Stadium, in a bad rain delay. A lot of rain coming down. They would play a doubleheader against the Expos tomorrow if this game gets rained out. Lots going on in baseball. We talked about the Red Sox and the Orioles, Blue Jays and the Yankees. Big race there. Reds, of course, are in Houston tonight against that ball club. Mark Portugal pitching against Cincinnati against Danny Jackson. And the Dodgers, of course, trail by 4.5. Still got a crack there, Mike, I think, in that National League West. A lot of games to make up, but still in the hunt. You know about the Pirates. They won today 2-8-7 of them over the Cubs.
Pirates win 8-7, hold on after building a big lead behind Doug Drabeck. Now, Drabeck wins his 20th today, becomes the first Pittsburgh pitcher since John Candelaria back in 1977. He was 20 up and 5 down that year. First Pirate pitcher since 1977 to win 20 games. And before the Candyman, you have to go all the way back to 1960 and Vernon Law to find the last Pirate pitcher who won 20 games. So a big mark and a milestone for Doug Drabeck today, holding on to win. He left 7 in the third innings. I think he gave him 5 earned runs. They hold on 8-7. Drabeck wins his 20th, and Barry Bonds joins his father, Bobby, in an elite club, becoming the 13th man to join the 30-30 club, the prestigious 30-30 club. His father did it. He's the first Pirate to do it, 13th player in history to do it, and he did it this afternoon.
Weren't called a lumber company for anything. I tell you, that was all that good hitting they had. Candelaria, that was interesting. It was the year before that. Now, playoff game against the Reds. Remember that game? 3 struck out like 14 guys. And 7 innings when the Reds swept them in that 76 series. And the Reds, went on to beat the Yankees in the 4 games at Yankee Stadium.
And you talked about the Pirates, who finally got off the schneid this afternoon. Big break they get. They're 2 up in the win column over the Mets. 85 up, 64 down. The Mets 83 up, 64 down, and a big break the Pirates would receive if the Expos, who have been hot and have moved within 4 in the loss column, 4.5 out overall, and the Mets have to play a doubleheader here tomorrow. Really puts the pressure on. You expect a split most of the time, although the Pirates, when they look at doubleheaders this year, they've done nothing but win doubleheaders this year.
They've won 5 of them, and don't forget, if somehow it rained again tomorrow...
But the weather forecast right now we're hearing is very good.
But if they did, they'd have to make up the 2 games in Montreal at the end of the year. That's the last thing the Mets want to have to do, is make up a couple of games up in Olympic Stadium at the end after they got to play 3 games. I guess they play the 2 games in Montreal. If the 3 games in Pittsburgh, they play the 3 games. If they meant something, then they go to Montreal to play those last 2 games. That's the last thing anybody wants in Major League Baseball, getting the baseball season with the lockout and everything else going on in late October.
Well, what you're going to look for then is most likely, and the Mets will make a decision 27 minutes from now. It is raining very steadily here at Shea. It's been raining for a couple of hours now, and looks like we'll see 4 left-handers tomorrow. We'll see Bonds,
Fernandez, and Viola for the Mets, and Navholtz, the other lefty, for the Expos.
That's
tomorrow.
exactly right.
We would see 4 left-handers, and the Mets obviously would need to probably get a sweep, keep a little pressure on Pittsburgh.
Because the Mets will play 10 of their last 13 after tomorrow. If they play either tonight, if they do get this in, or a doubleheader tomorrow, they will then play 10 of their last 13 on the road. They will go to Chicago, they will go to Montreal, they will come home for a weekend set with the Cubs, and then go to Pittsburgh for those games October 1, 2, and 3, which we have felt for a month would be the games that would decide the NL East.
And also game 4, the 4th, if they had to play a playoff game, it's at Three Rivers Stadium. So some problems with the Mets schedule as we move along here on the Mets Radio Network. Mike and the Mad Dog with you in New York at Shea. Raining, of course. Another 26 minutes at least with you before we get a decision as far as the Mets are concerned. We will take a timeout and then get back to Gary Thorne, long-time Met broadcaster and ESPN man, right here on the WFAN Mets Radio Network. Back at Shea, Mike and the Mad Dog with you on this rainy day indeed. We're waiting until about 8:30 tonight before we get a decision as far as the Mets are concerned there, Michael.
And it'll be a quick decision because it's raining harder than it has at any point in the evening, and you can count on it at 8:30. This game's going to get called. We're going to have a doubleheader here tomorrow.
All right. Guy who always fun to talk to. Haven't spoken to him in a long time. ESPN broadcaster, of course. Former Mets broadcaster. Does some New Jersey Devil hockey at times.
Did he do Met games?
Yes, he did do Met games.
I did?
Just kidding.
Oh.
Gary Thorne, of course. Gary, good to have you aboard today.
Nice to
How are
be here.
you?
Good.
And you're off to San Diego tomorrow, so at least you get out of this weather and get out to the West Coast, right?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that little day in La Jolla and stay on the beach for Thursday.
Gee, that's tough, guy.
That's tough, huh?
That's real tough.
It's that red eye coming back that's payback.
Boy, you do 2 games a week now, you and Norm Hitchcock on ESPN and the national games, Wednesday and Friday. And the Friday game is always the second game on the West Coast. So you have to do, if you're in the East on Wednesday, you got a lot of traveling to do on those Thursdays, don't you?
Yeah, which you always are, because the Wednesday game is always at least Chicago East, and it's usually been the East Coast. We've only had one game out in the Midwest, so it's always a Thursday travel day to the West Coast.
Boy, that's a long way to go.
How about it? You logged a lot of miles this year, and ESPN's shown so much baseball. From your standpoint, how's it been this year? What's your overall feel?
Well, I think it's certainly been a growing process for ESPN when you're doing Major League Baseball, because we're doing 6 games a week on the network, and it's unlike any other sport that you do because there are so many games. And I think we've had to grow with it and come to understand that baseball pretty much decides how the game will be done. You don't go into baseball and do it like a football game. The game itself will dictate whether you have excitement or not. I think the most important thing we've done for the fans is all the cutbacks. The fact we've been able to go back to the studio and bring you highlights, switch to other games, show you the 2 no-hitters on the same night. And that's what they thought would be their primary importance during the baseball year, and I think it's proven to be that way. And now with the pennant races underway, chance to be able to select the games 48 hours in advance and give you some pennant race games.
And if there was a Met Pirate playoff game, it would be ESPN's. It would not be CBS's. ESPN would get the game.
Any playoff game will be carried by ESPN.
Do you feel a little cheated that you do the whole regular season, and all of a sudden you're out of there as far as the playoffs are concerned? You can't sort of see the thing all the way through?
Well, not really, because you understand that that's just the way this business is. Unless you're doing radio for one of the teams that's in there, you're not going to do it. Even if you're doing TV for the Mets or somebody in the playoffs, you don't get to do the playoff games. That's just the way it is. I think that's kind of a shame. I used to like the NBC formula of bringing the local broadcasters into the booth for 3 innings. I think that added to the broadcast, because certainly nobody knows the teams better than the guys who follow them and broadcasting day by day.
You know, and we're talking about Gary Thorne here, Mike and the Mad Dog, on the Mets WFAN radio network. In a rain delay, we'll have a decision within 21 minutes, and it is raining pretty hard and has been for a while. You know, the thing is, guy, you jump in and do a game here, or you jump in and see a team for the first time in a couple of weeks there, and you know this, you did the Mets, you followed a team and did teams day in and day out. And baseball is such a subtle game, a game with nuance, seeing a guy every day, knowing little peaks and valleys, that when you come in and parachute in and do a game, it's tough on an announcer to get a real feel for this guy or that guy, or, you know, that you don't have the feel that a local broadcaster is going to have.
Absolutely, there's no question about that, and it's a lot more work for a broadcaster than if you're following a team on a daily basis. There's no question. The only way you can hope to keep up somewhat with that is that you've got to go down to the clubhouses, and you've got to talk to the players, and you've got to talk to the managers to find out what's happening with their ball club. And as a broadcaster, you just have to be very careful. You don't go out on the limb as much as you do when you're doing a local team, because many times the things you may talk about, you're not quite sure of. Even if you know they happen, you're not quite sure why they happened. And so you're just careful. You make sure that what you say you can support with background information.
You know, because so many times a fan who watches a team a lot will hear a national broadcaster make a statement, a blanket statement about his player, and say, what's this guy talking about? That's not true about this guy.
That's right.
This guy hasn't done that. I mean, you know, when you try to make those definitive statements, and you've only seen a guy 5 or 6 times, that's tough to do.
Yeah, well, that's like tonight's game. A prime example is you got Tim Raines has moved into the leadoff spot for Montreal, and he's only been there 7 games, and I haven't seen Montreal for about 3 weeks now, 2.5 weeks. So why? What happened? You get down and you do that story, and you know there's a real story there. You find out that he benched him for a couple of games because Raines wasn't producing, and he wanted to go back to the leadoff spot, and he said, I'm going to put you there, but you better produce. If you don't get down and find that out, then you can be talking off, you know, really up off a limb somewhere and make yourself sound stupid. So you hope you get 3 or 4 of those that you understand and know what's going on. You get those in the game and hope you haven't missed anything of major importance.
One thing you've seen here, Gary, in this National League, I know you've seen the A's. They're obviously head above everybody else. This National League, everybody is so inconsistent. Pirates, obviously, the Reds, 500 since, late May. They're a great start, won that division. This Met Ball Club has everybody puzzled. The Expos right now could be the best team in this league. They're not going to win the division, you wouldn't think. I mean, a really strange National League. And even if the team gets out of this, the Pirates or Reds or Mets, they're going to get ambushed by Oakland in the World Series, you would think, going in, right?
Yeah, you certainly would think so, but you get into those series, of course, and it's the old anything can happen because it's true. It can happen that way. But the team I think is going to suffer the biggest fall, Cincinnati. I don't think Cincinnati is going to do well in the playoffs at all.
I agree.
That club's just not ready. They're not playing well. Lou is a very nervous, uptight guy, and it's carried over to his players. He's the most nervous person around that ball club, and it's really upsetting some of the players in the way they're performing.
You know, you can almost have a big lead too soon. It's almost like you get a lead, and all of a sudden you try and say, gee, you know, I don't want to lose any of the lead, and you start playing defensive and try to protect what you have rather than going out and just playing.
No, see, you compare how Piniella has managed, and I don't say this negatively about Lou, it's just a different philosophy, but how he's managed it and how Tony La Russa's done it out in Oakland. Tony plays all his players, gets them in no matter what, whether they're ahead by a game or ahead by 20 games. He has a theory of managing that you've got to keep all your players involved in the game in order to keep them involved in the team. Lou is so uptight about winning every game that he doesn't play his bench. He puts pressure on his starters to produce every day, and he gets upset if there's just one day where he's got a 10-game lead and somebody doesn't perform well. Randy Myers, an example, goes out and gives up a couple of home runs and a couple of relief performances and suddenly isn't a stopper anymore. Well, you can't do that in the course of 162 games.
Hey, Mike and I have been talking it all year. Look at all the quotes you read. If we don't win it, I'm going to back up. I'm going to back up the van, get everybody out of here.
We're not that good. Even if we win, I'm going to make changes.
Man, it's unbelievable. You can't be saying those kind of things. I mean, I know wire to wire it's hard, but Mike hit it right in the head. He's been managing too defensively all year long. I think they're out of there playoffs myself. I think the Pirates, Mets are exposed.
We'll beat them.
Cincinnati out of there.
Yeah, I do too. I think they'll beat them. I think that's exactly what happened.
Mike and the Mad Dog on the WFAN Mets Radio Network with Gary Thorne in to do the ESPN game. May not get a chance to do it. Mets will make a decision 17 minutes from now, and it's still raining steadily. So we may be headed for a doubleheader tomorrow. Mix of sun and clouds tomorrow, high in the 70s. So it looks like we'll have good weather for a Met Expo doubleheader tomorrow. You know the Mets. You know them well. I mean, the faces have changed. New guys in and out. Well, what's your overall thought here? I mean, they can't win on the road. They don't beat lefties. And when you look at it, it's going to be hard for them, real hard for them to win this thing.
Yeah, it is going to be real hard for them to win it, although I still, if somebody says you've got to put money down, I still bet on the Mets. And I bet on them because of the pitching. I still think their pitching is better than Pittsburgh's and better than Montreal's. And I still think they're the team that's going to win this thing, but they've got to stop putting the pressure on themselves. They've just got to knock it off. I mean, they're reading too much of the press. They're listening too much to what everybody's saying. They're too good a ball club with too many experienced ball players to be doing that. But the trouble is, the key people they need against left-handers, Mack and Hojo, not hitting. And that's really built up to be a real wall for them that they've not been able to get through this season. But they're still too good a ball club to let that worry them. They need to take that New York attitude and run with it. Say we're in second place, Pittsburgh, and we're the team to beat, and go out there and swagger and play and just do it. Just go out and play.
The problem, though, Gary, is last night is a sort of loss. The championship teams don't lose.
That's right.
You know, they come back in the bottom of the eighth. Strawberry hits the ball over the center field fence.
Yeah.
And then in the ninth inning, the Expos squeak out a run.
But a team in
championship teams don't lose those games.
But championship teams don't lose 6 games in a row in a pennant race either, which is what Pittsburgh did. I mean, I think the sphincter muscles are pretty tight for the Buccos.
Yeah.
I really think that
but they're still in first place.
No question. That's where you want to be. But they aren't
and
there
they're going home.
But they aren't there by very much. The only thing that scares me about the Mets situation is going to Chicago for 4 games.
They're going to lose a couple there.
Boy, the Cubs would like nothing better than to say they knocked the Mets out of it. And those things, depending on where the wind's blowing, could be 12, 11 games or 1-0 games. But 4 days in Chicago, the Mets don't play well out there. The guys got to get home. The guys got to get to bed out there, and it's tough when you're playing day games in Chicago.
4 day games in a row.
The Mets have never done well at getting to bed in Chicago, and in this pennant race, if I was Buddy, man, I'm patrolling the halls, and there's a bed check every night, and it's for real, and the doors stay open, and I'm looking in all night. Because they got to do that if they're going to win in Chicago, and that's a tough city.
What's your read on Strawberry, Gary? You think they're going to sign him? You've been going around to L.A., you've been hanging out a little bit.
They want him.
Goldschmidt, maybe? Well, what's the story about
Well, they
Strawberry?
certainly want him. L.A. would dearly love to have him.
Yeah, but the Dodgers, a team that's always been responsible, is going to turn around and pay that guy $25 million. I can't see the Dodgers opening the coffers and giving anybody $25 million.
Not that much, no.
Maybe not in years gone by, but I think the Dodgers are so hurting. You look at that outfield they've had to play with this year. They've got to come up with an outfield. At least one outfielder. They don't have an outfielder out there, really, who plays much defense, and they haven't been doing much of the plate for him. I think they've got to go out and make a deal, and I think this question about Straw, if the Mets will say to Straw, we love you, we want you, we care about you, we'll give you 4 and incentives, he stays. If this hassle continues to go on between Straw and the front office, and he feels as though I'm not, because Straw means that. When Straw says, I don't feel wanted, that's exactly the way he feels. He wants to be in a place where there's some love and tenderness and hugging going on. And that's the way Straw is. I don't think people realize that about him. He needs that sort of attention from his employer, and he doesn't think he's getting it here. And I think the Mets are going to have to do that.
Gary Thorne on the, I was going to say on the Fan, but it's the WFAN Mets Radio Network. Let's take a 2-minute network break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Back here at Shea Stadium, a wet Shea Stadium, Mike and the Mad Dog on a Mets Radio Network rain delay broadcast as we talk to you about the world of sports, Michael.
And for those of you on the WFAN Mets Radio Network who don't get Mets Extra, we're going to get the Buddy Harrelson report ready, an 8-minute interview that I did with Buddy that played in the Mets Extra pregame, as Howie does each and every day on Mets Extra. He does the Buddy Harrelson report, and we're going to get that ready for you in just a couple of minutes here and let you hear what Buddy Harrelson had to say, not just about tonight's game, but about the Mets in general as they get ready to roll towards the end of this race, the last 15 games, the mood of the club, his mood, the whole thing. So in a revealing interview, we'll get that ready for you, and you'll hear it in just a couple of minutes. It is raining as heavily as it has in the last hour or so. The Mets will make a decision at 8:30. Very few folks in the stands, as you would expect. It has rained steadily, and you have to feel at 8:30 the Mets will tell us, come back tomorrow and get a doubleheader ready at 1 o'clock. And that's what we expect.
Well, you know how much pressure, if they play a doubleheader tomorrow, Mike, you know how much pressure there's going to be on the team that loses the first game? The Mets lost that first game tomorrow, not doubleheader. You know how much pressure there's going to be on game 2 for them? Boy, oh boy.
I think there's enormous pressure on the Mets tonight, tomorrow, whatever.
But having the pressure the same day when you lost is hard, and you got to play again.
And now the doubleheader puts even more pressure. And here's earlier tonight, I had this discussion with the manager of the New York Mets, Buddy Harrelson. Welcome back to Shea Stadium. Mike Francesa sitting in for Howie Rose here on Mets Extra. And the Buddy Harrelson Report is brought to you by Getty, the value leader of fine gasoline and more, and by your New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut Lincoln Mercury dealers. See them for their Showtime clearance celebration going on right now. Buddy, we got a little pinch hitter today as I sit in for Howie over this Jewish holiday. Now, I'm watching the game last night, and the Pirates lose. The big 3-run homer, the place is energized, and all of a sudden, as you said, the air comes out of the balloon. Not just another loss last night.
Yeah, I was watching the game last night, too. I saw the 3-run home run, our inability to score runs last night. Nothing abnormal for right now, and then the 3-run home run by Darrell, and you think, well, here we go, knowing that Pittsburgh got beat really terribly. Actually, it ended up 8-5, but they weren't very effective in the beginning of the game. And now we're sitting here in my office, and they're very effective in the beginning of the game, scoring 4 runs against Sutcliffe in the first inning, and leading, I think, now 7-1. So things can change, and hopefully things will change for us. Although the momentum was taken away and you're disappointed, you go home, you think about it, you procrastinate. You know, the nature of this game is to come back the next day, brand new. The sun comes up. It didn't come up too much today, but the sun comes up. It's a new day, and you go forward.
How about a little controversy last night? Doc Gooden saying that maybe they were picking up his signs at second base.
Well, a couple years ago, I think Montreal really picked up his pitches. He did some things that telegraphed his pitches. Of course, when Doc Gooden was on, it didn't matter. He was like all the great pitchers in baseball. Sandy Koufax sticks out in my mind, where he could say curveball, and if you forget it, you weren't going to hit that. And he could say fastball, you weren't going to hit that one either. But a lot of teams relay signals from second base, and that there's a danger there in that if you're not right and you're saying that's a fastball away and in actuality it's a fastball in, there is some danger to that. Plus, if the other team, if we knew they were doing it and you catch on to it, you can really go the other way, move away when you're throwing in, and there is some danger to that. We've been told over the years the catcher simply says to the hitter, if he's giving him, he's going to get you hurt. So that's kind of a warning, but I'm not sure that was happening.
You know, you alluded to the Pirates winning today as we tape this, and you talk about pressure. Last week, pressure to beat the Pirates. Now, with the road only 2 games away, and the road's been a 4-letter word for the Mets, the road only a couple of games away, and now the Pirates having won, a lot of pressure on the Mets. Now these 2 games become must games.
They do. We know all of that. We read about it. You're talking about it. The world's talking about it. We're in a pennant race. We're scrutinized. I think the least we think about it, the better we're going to be. just have a simplistic attitude. We had it when we were 9.5 games down. The last time we went to Chicago is where our offense really took off. We really kicked Chicago. And we feel, and I feel, if we accentuate the last trip to Chicago, regardless of what the past history has been on the road this year, you're better off, and that's what I'm trying to do. And I'd like the guys to relax, but hey, this is a pennant race. This is do or die, and this is the dog days, and he's going to be here tomorrow.
He's here right now, sitting next to me. You know, when we talk about the fact that this is going to obviously, and there's your word, going to be one on the road. No, I said it for you. I said it for you. This is going to be one on the road. Do you sense now that this is a tight team because they know they're going to go out there and win it where they haven't been successful?
Well, I just think we're not ourselves. We are thinking about the fact that we don't beat left-handers. We have one tonight. We have one tomorrow afternoon. We haven't played well on the road. We have 4 games in Chicago. We have 3 games in Montreal. We come back, we play Chicago 3 here, and then we go back on the road for 3 games at Pittsburgh. That's real. We know that's real. But now's the time to forget it. And how do you do it? I don't know. Maybe I can hypnotize them, and maybe it'll work. But I really think we're thinking too much about negatives. The negatives have happened. They're gone. Let's not let negativism slip in there, and not let the negative thinking really dictate what our objective is, and that is to be ourselves, relax, hit the ball, score more runs, let our good pitching do its thing.
You know, you talked about the lefties, kid lefties, Barnes tonight, Nabholz tomorrow. You got a Kevin McReynolds in a bad slump right now, 0 for 20. It's not the time to sit him down, especially against left-handers. You got to hope that he fights his way through it.
Yeah, we need Kevin McReynolds. I heard that a couple weeks ago. When you're going to give Mac a rest? I said a rest isn't what he needs. He needs to work it out, and it hasn't worked out. But we need him. He's our left fielder. He's a great hitter, and we know that. And you just hope that tonight's the night. You keep hoping for that. And tomorrow we'll have another left-hander. He's hitting .213 against left-handed pitchers. He's hitting about .284 against right-handed pitchers. It's amazing that those stats are so real, but they are. And he can't adjust to a left-hander sitting on the bench. He has to do it in the game.
How about the Strawberry situation? You pick up a newspaper or you hear about it, more from Strawberry. He's hitting, he's carrying a team, he's having a big September. Is this a distraction to you, to the team, to Darryl, you think, what's going on with the contract situation and all this talk that's going back and forth?
Well, you get tired of reading about contracts. He's got one for this year, and those things will be worked out or not worked out. He has an obligation here. It's not really a distraction for me, but I pick up the paper to read some good things, and I'm reading that. And I can't speak for the players, but I'm sure they're tired of it. He's doing a marvelous job for us. We have a lot of guys that are getting paid for this year and trying to do the job, and I think we just need. He said it too. He said it at the end. You know, he really wants to just get through this year. Some of the negativism keeps slipping in there. As to whether it's real or not that him and Cashin aren't getting along. I really don't know why. He's been paid here for 8 years and done a marvelous job, and they can't work out the money part right now, and they don't want to until the season's over, so let's get the season over with and get on with that.
Before we get to the lineups, Saturday start, are you any closer to making that decision?
Well, I wish I could announce it right now, but I still need one more talk with Mel, and we'll probably announce it sometime tonight or tomorrow.
All right, hit us with the lineup real quick.
Miller, Herr, Magadan, Strawberry, McReynolds, Jeffries, Johnson, O'Brien, Fernandez. I've had this lineup before. Miller's doing fine, feeling fine. He's hit .323 against left-handers, so he's in there.
Buddy Harrelson earlier tonight, and he might not get a chance. He probably won't get a chance to use that lineup tonight. 8:28 within a couple of minutes here. The Mets are going to make a decision. Still raining steadily. Mike and the Mad Dog on the WFAN Mets radio network. Orioles have tied it up against the Red Sox, bottom 3 in Baltimore. Ted Patterson standing by. Ted, give us the details.
Well, Boston scored first in the first inning off Anthony Telford, and he has since settled down. Jody Reed and Carlos Quintana with back-to-back hits to lead off the game, and Wade Boggs delivered a sacrifice fly on a sharp line drive to left field. Greg Harris has run into trouble, as you say, in the third. Chris Hoyle's a leadoff double to left center. He's a rookie catcher that spent most of the year in Rochester. And Bill Ripken, hitting last in the order, drove him home with a sharp single to right. So still nobody down here in the bottom of the third, and the Orioles have tied it up.
Thank you there, Ted. And from that ball game, we go north. Toronto Yankees are there against the Blue Jays, and Charlie Lennox is standing by. Charlie?
Well, through 2.5, it's the Blue Jays 2, the Yankees nothing. The Jays struck for 2 in the second. An RBI double by Rob Ducey, then a fielder's choice RBI by Louis Soho, who replaced Manny Lee in the second. Lee hurt his hand on the fielding play in the first, throwing out Steve Sachs. Ducey has batted .306 since coming up from Syracuse in early September. The Jays' Jimmy Key retired the first 8 batters, then gave up a couple of singles, but got out of it as the Jays try for a sweep against the Yankees, and we should note, if indeed they do, it'll be the first in the franchise history. Jays batting in the third, and they lead the Yankees 2-0.
Thank you, Charlie. So Toronto leads 2-0 over the Yankees. The Red Sox are tied with the Orioles in the third in Baltimore. Mike and the Mad Dog on the WFAN Mets Radio Network. Now we'll take a 2-minute local break. Mike and the Mad Dog on the WFAN Mets Radio Network. In for Howie Rose. And Howie knows to take the day off. He knows what day to take off.
No dummy.
Raining heavily right here. We should get word within a couple of minutes. And most likely we're headed towards a doubleheader at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Mets and Expos. It will be a battle of left-handers. But right now we have another guest. Dog, welcome him in.
He's always a good guy to have a chance to talk to. Howard Blatt of the Daily News. Howard, good to have you aboard here on the Mets Radio Network.
Thank you, Chris.
How are you doing? Boy, I think you disagree a little bit. I think this is a bad break for really both clubs. Having to play a doubleheader tomorrow if this game gets rained out. You know, it's hard to win 2 in one day. Pirates know about that. Big break for them. Bad break for the Expos and Mets. How about it?
Don't see it that way because it's so late in the season that unlike June when you'd have a doubleheader and you probably would see most of the regulars get the second game off, I think you're going to see the regular lineups playing 2 tomorrow, and it's, you know, as far as an advantage, disadvantage, they don't play tonight, they play at 2 tomorrow. They're playing every day down the stretch in September anyway. So much is at stake. I mean, it's just an issue of concentration. You shouldn't be able to concentrate on a game half as much because you have 2 of them.
But the loser, though, Howard, won't have that much time to sort of get recharged and get bounced back because they're going to have to play in like 25 minutes later.
I don't know how much of this psychological stuff really holds water anyway.
The only thing is also...
They have 15 games left. They've got to win a whole lot more of them than they have been winning lately in order to win. And the bottom line is you play them one at a time, and that's how you got to take them.
I didn't get hurt a little bit in your bullpen. If your stopper goes 2 in the first game, you're not going to be able to bring them back.
That's about the only way the Mets could, with just one important, reliable bullpen arm, could get hurt in a situation like this. But to tell you the truth, Franco threw last night, which made him only semi-available tonight. So now, I mean, now he could conceivably be available for an inning both games tomorrow.
An inning, I can see an inning both games. Okay.
How about Pirates today? Snapped that 6-game losing streak. That's obviously I mean, they almost blew it, but a big game for Pittsburgh. I mean, they are. You think they're going to get recharged again with this sort of win today?
I think the Pirates have had an entire season just like this September. They've won 5 and 6 in a row. They've lost 4 and 5 in a row. They've gone through the entire year like this. I don't take their recent problems to be any expression of a fold-up or a face down or we're going out of the race. We just realized we're in it and now we're choking. None of that stuff means a damn thing. The Pirates have played very inconsistently all year and in binges. And they played very, very well and very, very badly back-to-back with no rhyme or reason except maybe the fact that their pitching staff is probably not as reliable as the Mets staff, which is maybe why they're streak-prone.
And what has happened here is the Mets have cut them some slack because with the Mets home and you think, geez, the Mets might run it off after they leave town. Mets lose 3 or 4 at home while they go into a tailspin, and they're still in first place.
The Mets have had a very, very damaging homestand.
No question.
Considering
5-3, we were looking at 8-2 minimum. Now we're looking at 7-3 maximum, and if it's 6-4, the Mets are in a bad way.
Bottom line is, teams that win division should be able to win on the road. The Mets haven't done it all year. Now they're going to have to do it in a very short period. They're going to have to do something like 7 out of 10 on the road. Now, that isn't too tall an order for a club that deserves to be there.
Bottom line also is, Howard, championship teams cannot lose games like last night when Strawberry hits the home in the bottom of the 8th inning to tie 3-3, and the Mets give up a really kind of a shaky run in the 9th inning. That's a real bad loss for them. That's typical, I guess, all year long, right?
Let me tell you something. When you have a one-man offense and you have a ball club built around starting pitching and one guy to do the closing, you are very fragile and you are very subject to the kind of games that happened last night. If Strawberry doesn't get some help the rest of the way, this team can't possibly win no matter what he does. And the bottom line is he's carrying them on his back. That's the only reason they're still in the race.
If you were going to describe the Mets in a word or two for the whole season, how would you describe them?
Weaker than anybody expected. With bigger holes than anyone expected. A single word would be...
Or even a phrase. I mean, that's okay.
Schizophrenic is a good one.
I do not think they're an underachieving club. I think that they...
You're saying that the holes were not as apparent to everybody as they...
Some of them were.
But
middle relief, stuff like that.
Well, no leadoff hitter, the problems at the top of the lineup, and the problems in the pen.
They began the season with no reliable established center fielder, no reliable established catcher, and a real major question mark in every regard at first base. They began the season thinking that they would be okay in the bullpen, I think rightly so, and they've had disappointments there that they couldn't have anticipated.
Right.
I think that what you have here is a club that sprung major holes that filled some of them remarkably, in fact, in season.
Boston,
with a Darryl
O'Brien.
Boston and a Magadan and a Sasser, both of whom were not, they were
Right.
bid players at the start of this year.
That's right,
They
Magadan
were
of
halfway
Boston.
out the door by the middle of this year.
You pick up an O'Brien to give you defense up the middle with behind the plate. You pick up a Tommy Herr. I mean, they've been able to plug some of these holes down the stretch.
I think the front office had a dreadful winter. I think they've had a better season. I think they have filled some of the holes pretty well, all things considered. The thing that they didn't figure is that this club would be such a patsy for left-handed pitching, and I think maybe the reason they got Marshall in the offseason was to help them in that regard, but he didn't work out in a lot of different ways, including the fact that he didn't produce, he didn't have a good attitude, and he's a limited player who he wanted to be the everyday player, but he didn't want to play every day, and I don't know what that is.
It's a bad bat. How about
It's a good
Strawberry?
point.
How about Strawberry, Howard? What's your everybody wants to talk about Darryl Strawberry. You guys had a big thing today about that Strawberry says that, even if Frank talks, I don't want to listen. I'm going to obviously look at free agency. Is that Darryl just talking heavy here in September? Is he going to calm down in that 2-week period after the season?
Nobody knows what's going on in Darryl Strawberry's head. That's an old story. Anything he says, I think, pretty much take with a grain of salt. I do think, however, he has every reason to go at the end of the year. And I think the Mets have added to the number of reasons he's had to go foolishly, without any positive thing to gain from it. They've said things that were stupid. They've opened negotiations at a time when it made no sense with a lowball offer that only could have angered him. I think if they didn't want to put an offer on the table till the end of the year, they just should have handled it with a little bit of dignity and a little bit of restraint instead of infuriating him. I cannot figure out, frankly, what they had in mind with the way they've handled it.
But
I do understand why they didn't give him the contract earlier this year, feeling that he had something to prove coming off the year he was last year. I kind of think, frankly, that they should have thought hard about dealing him before any of the rehab situation came up last winter, and I wrote that last year. And, I mean, that's no reflection on what he means to them. In fact, maybe it is a reflection on it. Maybe they just should have gone in another direction if they, at that stage, didn't want to be dependent on a guy who they didn't think they could count on.
And interestingly, when you look at it, and everyone talks about the problem and the mistakes they've made in handling the situation. And if it comes December and we see Darryl wearing a hat of a different team, they made a huge, colossal blunder. But they have gotten a tremendous amount out of him this year. For whatever reason, they're going to look at it and say, hey, you guys say, all right, we screwed Darryl Strawberry up. Darryl just had his best year. He just went 40, 115, 285. He had the best year he ever had in his life.
In other words, maybe they motivated him by messing him up a little bit.
I really seriously doubt that.
No, but I mean, you look at the results. The results are going to mean.
But the results are not necessarily from their handling of him. Simply, they're a credit to the season he's put together.
That's what I'm saying. But it is his best. I mean, it's going to be his best year. I mean, it's headed to be his best year.
It will be, but I don't think they were using it as a motivational device.
Maybe they just fell into it.
Genuinely not sold on giving him the money he wanted earlier.
But I mean, they haven't destroyed him because look at the year he's having. I mean, this has not. I was saying to Buddy today, this has not affected him on the field.
But they may have destroyed themselves.
Yeah, without question. But what I'm saying is, I said to Buddy, everyone talks about the distraction to the team, the distraction to people. Darryl. Darryl can't be too distracted. Look what he's doing.
I don't think Darryl's distracted. I think Darryl's had a magnificent season, even though the production has been in concentrated bursts. There's really no question that he's had less protection this year than he's ever had before.
No question.
I mean, the number 5 hitter can't hit 200 against left-handed pitching, and he's supposed to be the guy that keeps other teams honest.
And he's sleepwalking right now.
I mean, the bottom line is that Darryl's had to do it alone in September, and he didn't have to do it alone in June. He got some help then, but it's the only time he's gotten some help. And obviously, when you fail and you're the lone hope, there's more attention to your failings. And it's not Darryl's fault that this club depends on him the way they do. I mean, this is a reflection on the team that was built around him, not on him.
How about Buddy Harrelson there, Howard Blatt? I mean, I think Mike and I both have thought that Buddy has made some bizarre moves in some big stretches. Obviously, Valera pitches some big games. Magadan batting last week with the bunt and, takes the bat out of Strawberry's hand. Stuff like that. Has Buddy shown you that he's a little testy? Has Buddy made a lot of inexperienced playoff pennant-type moves in September?
I think Buddy has some learning to do. I think he would admit that, too. I think that Buddy's hand on the Valera insertion, I think you got to think that that's a management call because Buddy didn't see Valera pitch this year.
Boy, we confronted
I think he
Mac
was
on
handed a 21-year-old rookie right-hander, and he was told, "Why don't you see what he can do?" I put him in the rotation.
We
and
confronted
that's what he does.
McIlvain right on the air about that.
He said no.
And I said, "Did you go to Buddy and say we want him to pitch in the starting rotation?" He said, was the manager's call. Now, of course, he could just be telling us that, but he said to us, it's the manager's call. All I said was, we're going to bring him up. He's ready to pitch. He says, Buddy asked for him. Buddy said, here are the reports. Let me give this guy a shot.
Whoever call it was a strange call on a team with as much veteran pitching to choose from as this one. Now, it's one thing. You're talking about Randy Tomlin. The Pirates were desperate for arms.
That's right.
I mean, they had nothing to lose by giving this kid a chance, and it turned out he was an instant success. You don't know in advance. But in a situation like this, when you have an Ojeda and a Darling, struggling as they were, it's a really hard thing to justify, a 21-year-old pitcher. And this is not with hindsight. It's hard to justify taking a shot with even your top prospect. I mean, this kid may be a wonderful pitcher down the road. I mean, we don't know off of 3 starts, but I mean, it's.
I wouldn't have pitched him, that's for sure, and I would have said it as you did, Howard, before the game started last couple of weeks in Pittsburgh.
8:42, Mike and the Mad Dog in for Howie Rose on the WFAN Mets Radio Network. Waiting out the rain delay. It has let up a little. We're waiting for an official announcement. I don't think we're going to play tonight. We'll have a doubleheader tomorrow. Talking with Howard Blatt, who covers the Mets for the Daily News. You got to start a shot Saturday. Who do you want to start? You got 4 guys out there who could start. I asked Buddy tonight. He says, I'll make a decision tonight. Tell you tomorrow.
He made the decision.
Oh, he did?
Ron Darling.
Since we came up. Is it Darling?
Ron Darling.
Who would you have started?
I think I probably would have started Darling also. It came down to Darling or Whitehurst. Frankly, you know, the whole 5th starter thing has been mishandled from the beginning this year. And both of the candidates have suffered for it, and the club has suffered terribly.
But they haven't pitched when they've had an opportunity. Darling has pitched lousy
that's part of the
baseball.
reason. That's part of the reason why, and it's also part of the reason why the thing has never been settled. I mean, it's in a sense, it's a contributing factor, and it's also it's the result. The bottom line on this is that I mean, ruling Valera out is a possibility, and ruling Ojeda out simply because it's Wrigley. I think that they were concerned about a right-handed dominating team against Ojeda. You're down to 2 right-hand alternatives. Darling and Whitehurst, whose season has begun to sour a little bit. And I really thought that he would have been an alternative off the way he pitched the first half. He hasn't pitched awfully in the second half. He hasn't been used regularly, and it's hurt him. And, I mean, the truth is, Ronnie has still been the guy who was down there and been there before, which is what he said, basically, when they took the ball away from him and handed it to Valera. And, I think that counts for something. I do think it counts for something. Buddy's rationale was Ronnie started a very, very important and strong game there, June 13th, second game of a doubleheader, 1 run, 6 hits in 6 innings.
Yeah.
Pitched a good game. The wind was blowing out. He kept the ball down, lots of ground balls.
That's what
they ended up
going
winning 9-6, second game of doubleheader.
Right.
That was 4 months ago.
You agree with that?
Well, I mean,
I don't
know if that's a justifiable explanation. He would be my choice of the 4.
I mean, righties make sense against the Cubbies, that's for sure.
I think I would pitch him too. Although I'm not going to use the excuse that Darling likes to use. But I don't know what my role's been all year. Every time he's gone out there, St. Louis, San Diego, the LA game when Gonzalez hits home run, he has not gotten the job.
He hasn't had a good year, and he has also been jerked around. It is true.
I agree with that, but again, he hasn't been an effective pitcher, and when you get into a pennant race, I know the guys, you got guys out there who are experienced. You got a guy who's a 30-plus win guy lifetime. You don't have many guys like that floating around.
Let him pitch.
Anyone else would give their eye to
Ron Darling
for that
is the
kind
pitcher
of guy.
that he was.
Doesn't have the velocity.
2 or 3 years ago. I'm not even sure that he's healthy enough to be that pitcher right now. He's had elbow problems on and off for some time. The bottom line is that they're probably going with the guy who's the best bet. But, I mean, the situation is so muddied already. I mean, who knows where Darling's head is at this stage? I mean, they handed the ball again when he thought he was going to be on the outs. I mean, he's probably been reading about how he's 1 step from the door to the Red Sox, even after September 1.
That's what everyone keeps saying.
2 professional goes out there, though, and forgets all that stuff, goes out there on Saturday and pitches a 7-inning, 5-hit, 2-run ball game, keeps his team in it.
Easy for you to say. Harder for him to do.
Yeah, good point.
Hold with us. Howard Blatt, Daily News, Mike and the Mad Dog on the WFAN Mets Radio Network. We'll be back after this 2-minute network break.